Russia and China have taken a step in recent days that has made their opponents pay attention. Not by a declaration, not by a sanction, but by a quiet, precisely timed gesture that does not go unnoticed in security circles. Though it may seem like just another military activity, both countries have signaled that their cooperation is now intentional, not just symbolic or accidental. If this signal is read correctly, it shows Asia's balance is already changing, not just starting to shift. The question now isn't if this will worry anyone, but who will first realize what Russia and China have started. What is happening now in Asia is not an isolated incident or a one-time show of force. It is part of a broader movement that consists of several steps, military, political, and strategic, and only together do they start to make sense. Russia and China have been coordinating their actions in recent weeks more than ever before. And they're doing it exactly where the United States and its allies have their most sensitive interests. At the same time, tensions are rising around Taiwan. Japan is changing its rhetoric, and Washington is making concrete decisions that are no longer just warnings, but actual shifts of power. It might look chaotic from the outside, but when we look at it more closely, it turns out to be a connected chain of events. And within it lies a moment that is significantly more serious for the United States, the West, and their allies than it might seem at first glance. You are watching the channel Russo-Chinese. Let's begin. A purposeful flight. What Russia and China did in early December was more than just another statistic exercise. Together, they sent aircraft into the air that are usually used in completely different situations than during routine patrols. Nuclear-capable strategic bombers, early warning aircraft, and escort fighters flew together near Japan and South Korea, exactly where reaction time, nerves, and political will are being tested. It wasn't a violation of airspace, but an entry into identification zones where no one is shooting yet, but where any mistake can already mean a problem. These flights have a clear purpose. They are designed to trigger an alarm, force the opponent to take off, turn on radars, activate systems, and show how quickly and how coordinated they can respond. Japan and South Korea responded immediately, but that's exactly part of the game. Every takeoff, every response, every system switch is a data point that the other side records. And when this data is collected together, Russia and China are not just testing Japan, but the entire United States security umbrella in the region. It's important to note, this isn't the first such flight. This is already the 10th joint mission of this type, which means that the cooperation has rhythm, a plan, and continuity. And when you add the presence of a Russian early warning aircraft, the picture changes. That's no longer just symbolism, but a coordinated operation where real-time battlefield awareness is being practiced. And this is where it breaks, because if Russia and China can cooperate like this in the air, the question is no longer what exactly they demonstrated, but what did they verify with each other during the process? And that brings us to another layer of this tension, which is much more related to Japan than it seems. Why now and why Japan? The timing of this flight is not a coincidence. This comes as Japan stops being a silent observer and starts speaking a language long unheard in the region. Tokyo has openly been pushing the boundaries of what it considered politically unacceptable until recently. It is rearming faster, investing in long-range missiles, and increasingly admitting that a future conflict over Taiwan would directly involve Japan. Quite the opposite. From Tokyo's perspective, it would be a problem that directly threatens its security, shipping routes, and even the very existence of the state. This shift was further accelerated by statements from the new Japanese Prime Minister, who openly admitted that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could lead to the invocation of collective self-defense. For Japan, this is a fundamental shift in rhetoric, but for Beijing, it's a red line. China reacted extremely sharply, accused Tokyo of violating the One China principle, launched diplomatic protests, and relations reached their lowest level in years within just a few days. Suddenly, it's no longer just about historical disputes or economic rivalry, but about the open question of military involvement. And this is exactly where Russia comes into play. For Moscow, Japan is not only an American ally, but also a country that, according to the Russian interpretation, is becoming increasingly militarized and threatens the post-war order. By the way, there is still no formal peace treaty between Russia and Japan after World War II, which only underscores how peculiar and unresolved their relationship is. So when Russian and Chinese planes fly together near Japan, it's not just about regional pressure. It's a signal that Beijing and Moscow see Tokyo as a common problem and are ready to respond to it in a coordinated way. That alters the operation's significance. It's no longer just a show of force against Japan itself, but a test of how the entire American security system in Asia will respond. Because if Japan becomes the front line, the question is who actually stands behind it? And that's exactly where the tension starts to move to a completely different level. The invisible layer beneath the surface. What was happening in the sky is only part of the story. What's even more important is what happens beneath the surface, both literally and figuratively. While Russian and Chinese aircraft flew near Japan, a nearly secret joint missile defense exercise was underway. Without major announcements, but with extremely sensitive content. This is exactly where it is decided who survives the first strike. For Russia and China, missile defense is an existential issue. If you lose the certainty of a second strike, you lose nuclear deterrence. That's where American strategy has been heading in recent years. Missiles in Japan and the Philippines, plans for more systems in Europe, and an ambitious space-based missile defense project are creating pressure that both Moscow and Beijing interpret the same way, as an attempt to gain a decisive advantage. Joint exercises here are not just symbolic. It's an effort to connect Russian and Chinese systems to share data and experience. That's a much higher level of cooperation than a joint bomber flight. This is no longer about political signals, but about technical compatibility in a high-level conflict. At this point, the strategic balance starts to shift. If Russia and China are able to cooperate even in the field of missile defense, they're not just balancing the United States, they're trying to change the very rules of the game. Now, it's not about who shoots first, but who lasts longer. And when nuclear powers start preparing for a scenario where survival is no longer a given, the tension rises to a level that can no longer be ignored. And it's precisely this quiet technical shift that creates the backdrop for further decisions that are no longer hidden. Decisions made by the United States that push the entire region even closer to the point of no return. The United States of America is raising the stakes. While Russia and China are moving their cooperation to a technical and systemic level, the United States is responding in a way that can no longer be ignored. Washington recently announced a multi-billion-dollar arms sale to Taiwan. These aren't symbolic packages or political gestures for headlines. These are missile systems, howitzers, drones, and weaponry with a single purpose: to make any potential attack on Taiwan as costly and as bloody as possible. With this move, the United States is making it clear that they are not planning to back down or soften their position. Instead, they're shifting the conflict from words to actions. For Beijing, this is a red flag. Every new weapon in Taiwan shortens the window of time in which China could act under favorable conditions. As this window narrows, reactions grow more nervous. However, for the United States, this move also has another, less visible cost. Arming Taiwan means tying up capacities, production lines, and political attention in a region where the United States is already walking a fine line. Europe, Ukraine, the Middle East, and now also the Indo-Pacific. America's problem isn't a lack of strength. The problem is its commitments are growing faster than it can respond in several places at once. And this is exactly what Russia and China are watching very closely. Joint flights, quiet missile defense drills, and United States arms deals for Taiwan don't cause chaos, but form a pattern. Each of the actors pushes where they sense the other's weakness. And the more the United States tries to strengthen deterrence, the more their opponents try to find a way around it. The result is an environment that's not just about Taiwan or Japan anymore, It's about whether one power can maintain stability in a system that's starting to slip out of its hands. This is also where pressure shifts to United States allies, who may feel the consequences before Washington does. Allies on the front line. When great powers get into a tense standoff, the first tremors won't be felt in Washington, Beijing, or Moscow. The allies will feel them, and in this case, the countries in the Asia-Pacific region are closest to the epicenter. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, as well as Australia and the Philippines, are gradually finding themselves in a situation where it's no longer just about diplomatic stances, but about everyday security decisions. Japan is now on the front line due to this development. Every joint flight of Russian and Chinese aircraft, every approach to its identification zone, means not only military pressure, but also a test of political resilience. Tokyo has to respond, but every response also increases the risk of further escalation. And the more Japan gets involved in the Taiwan issue, the more it becomes a legitimate target of pressure from both Beijing and Moscow. South Korea is in an even more awkward position. It is closely linked to the United States, but also faces pressure from North Korea. Incursions by Russian and Chinese aircraft into its identification zone are not just a provocation, but also a reminder that if the situation escalates, Seoul would have to deal with multiple crises at once. For Taiwan, this whole development is a clear signal. Joint flights, arms packages, sharp rhetoric around Japan. All of this creates an image of a region where military presence is increasing and the time for decision-making is getting shorter. Although Taiwan is not directly involved in these incidents, it is their silent focal point. Every step taken around it has a direct impact on how safe it will feel tomorrow. This is where the West's bigger problem shows. Europe's and Asia's security are now inseparable. If tensions in the Indo-Pacific escalate, European allies will feel it too, through the economy, military capabilities, and political decisions. And the closer this reality gets, the clearer it becomes that what looks like regional tension today has the potential to grow into something much bigger. A system under pressure. When these events are viewed together, they no longer seem like coincidences. Joint flights by Russia and China, quiet cooperation in missile defense, Beijing's sharp rhetoric toward Japan, and massive American arms packages for Taiwan all create a single picture. Not a picture of an approaching war, but a picture of a system that is coming under increasing pressure from all sides. The United States faces a problem with no easy solution. They must deter in Europe and Asia simultaneously, reassure allies, and respond to two adversaries increasingly coordinating their actions. It's not that the United States is losing strength. The point is that their adversaries are learning how to stretch, tie down, and test this strength without crossing the threshold into open conflict. Russia and China don't have to achieve a quick victory. It's enough for them if they manage to disrupt predictability, increase nervousness, and force the West to react in multiple places at once. Each joint flight, exercise, and diplomatic statement in this environment raises the risk of mistakes. And in a system where aircraft move close to each other and decisions are made within minutes, even a small mistake has the potential to trigger major consequences. That's why monitoring this development is important. Not because war is inevitable, but because the rules that have so far helped to avoid it are changing. The question is no longer whether the tension is rising. The question is how long this system can function before it breaks down somewhere. And when that happens, what will matter is not who wanted the conflict, but who failed to stop it in time. Conclusion: a shift that cannot be reversed. What we are witnessing today in Gaza is not yet a war, but it's not the stability the world has had for decades. Russia and China are shifting their cooperation from symbolic gestures to systematic collaboration. The United States of America is acting with weapons not words. Japan is shifting its language, allies are adjusting, and the region is seeing increased military technology. The most important thing is that this process is happening gradually, without one big moment, without a clear breaking point that could be pointed to in retrospect. That's what makes it dangerous. Every step is still justifiable. Every decision has its explanation. When these steps combine, they create a dynamic no one fully controls anymore. That's why it's not just about Taiwan, Japan, or a single joint bomber flight. It's about the way great powers are changing how they test boundaries, how they tie up their opponents' capacities, and how they prepare the ground for crises that may not arise intentionally. The open question today is not who would win in such a conflict. The question is whether anyone can be sure they can stop it in time. And that's exactly the moment that deserves attention. When tension is the norm, the first real breaking point often comes without warning.
If you liked the video, I'd appreciate a like and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the others I'm currently working on. You can support my work by thanking me and help the video reach more people by clicking praise. Thank you.